The disabled Latino veteran watched strangers steal his home with fake papers, while police walked away. He made one call to his old biker brothers. What the thieves didn't know, they just robbed a man with 50 bikers who ride for family, and they were already coming. Jose Ramirez's shoulder was killing him today. The bullet lodged 2 inches above his right collarbone always flared up before rain, and the October sky over Tucson, Arizona, hung low and gray with the promise of a storm. He shifted in the driver's seat of his old Ford pickup, trying to find a position that didn't send lightning bolts down his arm. The VA doctor had been useless. Another prescription. Another, let's wait and see. Another month of pain. At least he could go home. He turned on a saguaro lane, his lane, and immediately knew something was wrong. There were cars in his driveway, 3 of them, a silver Honda, a beat-up Chevy, and a white cargo van with no plates. Jose slowed his truck to a crawl, his combat instincts prickling awake after years of dormancy. Nobody should be at his house. He lived alone. He always lived alone. He parked on the street and limped toward his front door, as cane tapping against the concrete walkway he'd paid to have repaired last spring. Through the living room window, he could see people moving around inside. His blood pressure spiked. His front door, was wide open. "Hey!" Jose shouted, pushing through the entrance. "What the hell is going on?" 4 people stood in his living room. 2 men, 2 women, all in their 30s, all wearing matching blue polo shirts with a logo he didn't recognize. They turned to face him with expressions that weren't surprised or guilty. They looked annoyed. "Can we help you?" the taller man asked. He had slicked back hair and a clipboard tucked under his arm. Jose's mouth fell open. "Can you help me? This is my house." "Who are you people?" The woman nearest the fireplace, his fireplace, where his grandfather's silver star sat in a shadow box, stepped forward with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. This property was donated to the Veterans Hope Initiative 3 weeks ago. We're with the nonprofit. We're here to assess the property for transitional housing." "Donated?" Jose felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "I didn't donate anything. This is my house. I've lived here for 12 years. The slicked hair man pulled papers from his clipboard and held them out. According to our records, the transfer was completed on September 15th. Everything's legal and processed through the county. We have the deed transfer right here. Jose snatched the papers, his hands shaking. The documents looked official, stamped, notarized, covered in legal language he could barely parse through the red haze of fury clouding his vision. But there at the top was his address, 5-12 Saguaro Lane. And there at the bottom was a signature that looked disturbingly like his own. "I never signed this," Jose said, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "I never signed anything." "Sir, we understand this can be emotional," the woman said in a voice like poisoned honey. "Many veterans who donate their homes to our initiative struggle with the transition. But this is for a good cause, helping homeless veterans find housing. I'm sure you can appreciate that given your service. Get out of my house. Sir, get out." The 4 people exchanged glances. The slicked hair man smiled, and it was the smile of someone who knew he was winning. "Sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave. If you have concerns about the transfer, you're welcome to file a dispute with the county clerk's office, but as of right now, legally, this property belongs to Veterans Hope Initiative." Jose pulled out his phone with shaking fingers and dialed 911. Officer Maria Lopez arrived within 20 minutes, along with her partner, a younger cop named Tyler. Jose stood on his own front lawn like a stranger while the 4 squatters remained comfortably inside, drinking what was probably his coffee from his mugs. "Mr. Ramirez," Officer Lopez said after examining the papers, "I understand your frustration, but this appears to be a civil matter." "A civil matter?" Jose couldn't believe what he was hearing. "They're in my house. They have fake papers. The papers look legitimate, sir. They have county stamps, notary seals. It's forgery. Officer Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Sir, we can't determine forgery at the scene. That requires document analysis, court proceedings. If these documents are fraudulent, you'll need to prove it through the legal system. So, you're just going to let them stay in my house. Officer Lopez's expression was genuinely sympathetic, but her hands were tied without evidence of a crime we can act on right now. Yes, I'm sorry. You need to file a dispute with the county and possibly get a lawyer. This is a property ownership issue, not a criminal trespass situation. Jose watched helpless and furious as the two officers returned to their cruiser and drove away. The woman from Veterans Hope Initiative appeared in the doorway. That same fake smile plastered on her face. We really are sorry about the confusion, she called out. But we need you to leave the property now. We have work to do. Jose stood there on the sidewalk. A 52-year-old disabled veteran who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan, who'd taken a bullet defending people he'd never met, who'd come home and worked construction until his shoulder wouldn't let him anymore. He'd bought this house with his disability payments and his savings. He'd painted every wall. He'd fixed the roof. He'd planted the ocotillo cactus in the backyard. And now strangers were kicking him out of it. His phone rang. He answered without looking at the caller ID. Jose, it's Big Mike. The gravelly voice of his old friend rumbled through the speaker. Haven't heard from you in a while, brother. How you been? Jose looked at his house at the squatters moving through the rooms, like they owned them. And something inside him snapped into focus. Big Mike, the club, his brothers. Mike, Jose said, his voice steadier than it had been in hours. I need help. Can you meet me at the clubhouse? There was a pause. Then I'll make the call. How many do you need? Jose smiled for the first time that day, and it wasn't a nice smile. All of them. The Iron Brotherhood clubhouse sat on the edge of Tucson, a converted warehouse with motorcycles lined up outside like chrome soldiers. Jose hadn't been here in almost a year, not since his shoulder got too bad to ride. But the moment he limped through the door, it felt like coming home. The place smelled like motor oil, leather, and coffee that had been sitting too long. Motorcycle parts littered workbenches along the walls. An American flag hung beside a POW Kwame A banner, and sitting around a scarred wooden table were the men Jose had served with, bled with, and trusted more than anyone else in the world. Big Mike stood up first. He was a mountain of a man, 6'4", arms like tree trunks, with a gray beard that reached his chest and eyes that had seen too much war. He'd been Jose's sergeant in Afghanistan back when they were both young and stupid enough to think they were invincible. Jose Mike's handshake turned into a crushing hug. Good to see you, brother. Around the table, the others rose. There was Tommy Wrench Washington missing 3 fingers from an IED, Carlos Ghost Ramirez, who still didn't talk much about what happened in Fallujah, David Doc Harris, who'd been a field medic and now worked at the VA, and 6 others, all veterans, all riders, all brothers. What's going on? Mike asked, his smile fading as he saw Jose's face. You sounded bad on the phone. Jose dropped the forged papers on the table like they were contaminated. Someone stole my house. The room went silent. The hell you say? Wrench muttered. Jose explained everything. Coming home from the VA, finding strangers in his house, the fake donation papers, the cops saying it was a civil matter. His voice shook with anger as he described watching the squatters drink his coffee while standing on his lawn like a beggar. Doc picked up the papers, his medic's careful hands smoothing the pages. Veterans Hope Initiative, he read aloud. Anyone heard of them? Big Mike's face went dark. Yeah, I've heard of them. Everyone turned to look at him. About 6 months ago, Mike said, a guy came to my shop asking if I knew any veterans struggling with housing. Said he was from some non-profit helping vets. Wanted to know if anyone was behind on payments, having trouble keeping their homes. He shook his head. Something felt wrong about it. Too smooth, too pushy. I sent him packing. You think it's the same people? Jose asked. I think it's the same scam. Mike pulled out his phone and started typing. Let me make a call. He stepped outside. Through the window, Jose could see him pacing, phone pressed to his ear. The other bikers gathered closer, examining the forged documents, their faces growing harder with each page. This is professional, Doc said. County stamps, notary seals. Someone put money into making these look real. How many vets you think they've done this to? Carlos asked quietly. Jose hadn't thought about that. His blood ran cold. More than just me. Big Mike came back inside, his expression grim. That was Danny over in Phoenix. He remembers that non-profit name. Says a Vietnam vet in his town almost lost his house to them last year. They dropped the case when the vet's son, a lawyer, got involved and threatened to expose them. So they target veterans who can't fight back, Wrench said. Guys with no family, no lawyers, nobody watching their backs. They picked the wrong veteran this time, Mike said. He looked around the table at his brothers. Jose has us. Damn right he does, Doc said, and the others nodded. Mike pulled out his phone again and opened a group chat. Here's what we're going to do. We could get lawyers involved, and we will eventually. But first, his thumbs flew across the screen. First, we show up. Show up where? Jose asked. Your house? Mike looked up and his smile was predatory. These people are squatters. They're counting on you being alone, being helpless, having nobody in your corner. They're counting on the system being slow and you giving up. He hit send on his phone. Let's show them they miscalculated. Jose phone buzzed, then Wrench's, then Doc's. All around the table, phones lit up with the same message in the Iron Brotherhood group chat. Brother needs help. Veteran robbed of his home. Meet at 512 Saguaro Lane, Tucson, 4 p.m. today. Spread the word. Mike, what are you doing? Jose asked. Calling in reinforcements. Mike was already texting other numbers, other clubs. We've got brothers in Phoenix, Mesa, and Sierra Vista, all within an hour's ride. By 4 and. Jose, you're going to have an army. Wrench grinned. I love it when we make house calls. We're not breaking any laws, Mike said firmly. We show up, we stand there, and we let these squatters know that Jose isn't alone, that he has family, that we're watching. He looked at Jose. Sometimes presence is enough. Jose felt something he hadn't felt since the cops left. Hope you really think this will work. I think, Mike said, checking his watch, that in about 3 hours, 50 bikers are going to surround your house. And I think those squatters are going to realize they made a very big mistake. Carlos stood up and grabbed his jacket. I'll ride out to Mesa. Make sure everyone gets the message. I'll hit up Sierra Vista, Doc added. Within minutes, the clubhouse was in motion. Bikers were making calls, checking motorcycles, loading up. The air filled with the sound of engines roaring to life. A sound like thunder, like justice, like brotherhood. Big Mike clapped a hand on Jose's shoulder. Go home, brother. Take pictures of everything in your house, every room, every item they've touched. Document it all. We're going to need evidence. And then Mike's grin was fierce. Then we ride. At 3:47 p.m., Saguaro Lane was quiet. Kids rode bikes. Mrs. Lee watered her cacti. Old Mr. Jenkins sat on his porch reading the newspaper. It was a Tuesday afternoon in suburban Arizona, ordinary and peaceful. At 3:48 p.m., the sound of thunder rolled in from the east. Jose stood across the street from his house, phone in hand, documenting everything his Mike had instructed. Through the windows, he could see the squatters moving around freely. The woman was in his kitchen. The slicked hair man was upstairs in what used to be his bedroom. His stomach churned with helpless rage. Then he heard it. The rumble of engines, distant but growing closer, getting louder. The first motorcycle appeared at the end of Saguaro Lane like a herald. Big Mike on his black Harley-Davidson American flag whipping from the back. He pulled up slowly, deliberately, and parked directly across from Jose's house. He killed the engine but didn't move. Just sat there, arms crossed, staring at the front door. 10 seconds later, 2 more bikes appeared. Then 5, then a dozen. They came from every direction, north, south, east. A coordinated convoy of chrome and leather. The sound was deafening. A mechanical roar that shook windows and set off car alarms. Harleys, Indians, Triumphs, choppers custom-built in garages by men who knew every bolt and wire. Mrs. Lee dropped her watering can. The bikes lined both sides of Saguaro Lane, forming a steel corridor with Jose's house at the center. Riders dismounted in synchronized silence, killing their engines one by one until the street fell into an eerie quiet. They stood beside their motorcycles, arms folded, leather vests bearing patches from a dozen different clubs. Iron Brotherhood, Road Warriors MC, Veterans Vanguard, Steel Horse Regiment. Jose counted them. 30, 40, 50, more still arriving. They weren't shouting, weren't threatening. They were just there, a living wall of muscle, leather, and unwavering presence. Most were his age or older, gray beards and weathered faces. Vietnam vets stood beside Gulf War vets, stood beside Afghanistan vets. Men who'd served in different wars, but shared the same code. You don't abandon your brothers. Inside the house, Jose saw movement at the windows. The woman's face appeared, her confident smile replaced by wide-eyed shock. The slicked-hair man joined her, his phone already pressed to his ear. Neighbors poured out of their houses. Mr. Jenkins stood on his porch, newspaper forgotten. The Ramirez family from 3 doors down came out with their teenage son, who immediately started filming on his phone. Within minutes, a dozen cell phones were recording. Holy hell, someone whispered. What's going on? Big Mike stepped forward and raised his voice, calm but carrying. We're here peacefully. These men and women are supporting a disabled veteran who's been robbed of his home. We're not breaking any laws. We're just not leaving. A woman Jose recognized, Lisa from the corner house, walked over to him. Jose, is this your place? What happened? Squatters, Jose said, his voice tight. They forged papers, claimed I donated my house to their fake charity. Cops said it's a civil matter. Lisa's face darkened. That's your house, the one you've lived in for years, 12 years. Those bastards. She pulled out her phone and started typing. Within seconds, Jose's phone buzzed with notifications. She'd posted to the neighborhood Facebook group. The story was spreading. More neighbors approached. The Johnsons, the Patels, even grumpy old Mrs. Henderson, who never talked to anyone. They formed a second ring around the bikers, ordinary citizens standing in solidarity. Inside the house, the front door suddenly flew open. The slicked-hair man stepped out, trying to project confidence, but his hand shook as he pointed at the crowd. This is harassment. You can't do this. Nobody moved. 50 bikers stared back at him in absolute silence. I'm calling the police, he shouted. Go ahead, Big Mike called back calmly. We're not trespassing. This is a public street. We have every right to be here. The man's face reddened. You're trying to intimidate us. We're standing, Mike said flatly. If you feel intimidated by veterans standing on a public street, that's your problem. A biker Jose didn't know. Older guy with a screaming eagle patch, 101st Airborne, spoke up. You're in a veteran's house, a man who served his country. You really want to have this conversation in front of cameras? The slicked-hair man noticed for the first time all the phones recording. His confidence cracked. We have legal papers, forged papers, Doc called out. He'd been researching on his phone. Veterans Hope Initiative isn't registered as a non-profit in Arizona. I checked. You're not a charity. You're criminals. The man's face went pale. He retreated back inside and slammed the door. The crowd remained. As the afternoon turned to early evening, nobody left. The bikers stood their ground, a wall of silent judgment. More neighbors arrived with folding chairs and water bottles. Someone ordered pizzas. It stopped being a standoff and started being a vigil. Jose stood among his brothers watching his house and felt something shift inside him. He wasn't alone anymore. He wasn't helpless. These people, these warriors and neighbors, they had his back. Inside the house, the squatters' shadows moved anxiously from window to window. They'd expected an isolated target, an easy mark. Instead, they'd gotten an army. At 6:30 p.m., Jose's phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Ramirez, a nervous female voice said, "This is Tracy Lee from Channel 7 News. We heard about your situation. Can we come interview you?" Jose looked at Big Mike, who nodded. "Yeah," Jose said. "You can come." The squatters had wanted this to be invisible, a quiet theft buried in paperwork and legal delays. Instead, they just become the evening news. Jose spent the night at Big Mike's house, unable to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw strangers in his living room, sitting on his couch, sleeping in his bed. By 6 a.m., he gave up and made coffee. His phone had blown up overnight. The Channel 7 story had aired, then gone viral on social media. Hashtags were forming. Justice for Jose, veteran home theft. Supportive messages flooded in from across the state. But so did the hate. You're harassing a legitimate non-profit. One message read, "Those bikers are thugs. You should be ashamed." Jose was scrolling through the comments when Mike came downstairs already dressed. "Got something," he said, showing Jose's phone. It was an email forwarded from 3 different sources. A legal notice, emergency restraining order. Jose Ramirez is hereby ordered to cease all harassment of Veterans Hope Initiative staff and property. Violation will result in arrest. They filed this at 11 p.m. last night. Mike said, "Emergency filing. Judge signed it without a hearing. Jose blood ran cold. Can they do that?" They just did. And there's more. Mike scrolled down. "They're threatening to sue you for defamation, emotional distress, and interference with charitable operations. They're asking for $500,000 in damages." Jose sank into a chair. "I don't have that kind of money. They know that. That's the point." Mike poured himself coffee. "They want you scared and broke before you can fight back." Classic intimidation tactic. Jose's phone rang. A lawyer he'd contacted yesterday, finally calling back. The conversation lasted 5 minutes and ended with Jose's stomach in knots. $3,000 retainer just to start, Jose said after hanging up. He says a case like this could take months, maybe years. Cost me everything I have. He looked at Mike. I can't afford to fight them legally. Then we don't fight them legally. Mike grabbed his keys. Not yet, anyway. First, we find out who we're really dealing with. Doc and Wrench are already at the courthouse. They should have information soon. At the Pima County Courthouse, Doc and Wrench sat in the records office playing the role of concerned citizens, researching non-profit organizations. The clerk, a tired-looking woman named Helen, pulled up files on her computer. Veterans Hope Initiative, she said, typing, Yes, we have transfer records for them. Let's see. They've processed 4 property transfers in the past 8 months. Doc and Wrench exchanged glances. 4. Can you tell us the addresses? Doc asked casually. Helen squinted at her screen. Well, there's 512 Saguaro Lane in Tucson. That's the recent one. Before that, 89 Cactus Drive in Phoenix, 1502 Mesquite Road in Mesa. And she scrolled for 12 Veterans Boulevard right here in Tucson. Wrench pulled out his phone and started typing all veterans. According to the filings, Yes. All donations to the nonprofit for transitional housing purposes. Helen looked up. Is something wrong? Just curious, Doc said with his best friendly smile. Thanks for your help. Outside the courthouse, they immediately called Mike. 4 houses, Wrench said. Same pattern, same paperwork, same nonprofit. Mike, this is bigger than we thought. Mike's voice came through with steel underneath. Get the addresses. We're going to visit every single one. Inch. By noon, a team of bikers had split up across 3 towns. Jose rode with Big Mike and Carlos to 412 Veterans Boulevard in their own town, a small ranch house in a quiet neighborhood just 15 minutes from Jose Place. The house looked lived in. A car in the driveway, curtains in the windows. Mike knocked on the door. A man in his 60s answered, thin and wearing a ratty bathrobe. Yes, sir. I'm Mike Henderson with the Iron Brotherhood Veterans Group. This is going to sound strange, but we're investigating a nonprofit called Veterans Hope Initiative. Does that name mean anything to you? The man's face went white. How do you know about them? Jose stepped forward. Because they're doing to me what I think they did to you. They forged papers and stole my house. The man who introduced himself as Robert Yates, Marine Corps veteran, invited them inside. The house was sparse, almost empty. Robert explained that 2 years ago, he'd been behind on his mortgage after his wife died. A woman from Veterans Hope Initiative had approached him, offering help. She said they could restructure my debt, help me keep the house, Robert said, his voice shaking. I signed papers, lots of papers. I didn't understand most of them. I just trusted her. She had a badge, official documents. What happened? Mike asked. 6 months later, I got a letter saying I didn't own my house anymore, that I'd donated it to their program, but they let me stay as a tenant as long as I kept paying rent. Robert's laugh was bitter. Rent on my own damn house. I've been paying them $200 a month for 18 months. Jose felt sick. Why didn't you fight it? I tried. Got a lawyer? Cost me $5,000 before he told me the paperwork was too complex, and it would take years to unravel. I couldn't afford it. I'm on a fixed income. Robert looked at them with hollow eyes. I gave up. Figured at least I could still live here. Carlos was already on his phone to the other biker teams. The reports came back within the hour. Same story in Phoenix, same story in Mesa. Veterans targeted, paperwork forged, houses stolen through legal manipulation. Some victims were paying rent on homes they'd owned. Others had been evicted and were now homeless, all because they trusted people claiming to help veterans. Mike's jaw was clenched so tight, Jose could hear his teeth grinding. How many more, you think? How many houses have they stolen that we don't even know about? Could be dozens, Doc said quietly. Across multiple counties. Jose looked at Robert Yates sitting in his own kitchen, paying rent to thieves, and something crystallized inside him. This wasn't just about his house anymore. This was about all of them. Every veteran who'd been targeted, robbed, humiliated. We need evidence, Jose said. Real evidence enough to bury these people. Mike nodded slowly. Then we keep digging, find every victim, document everything, and build a case so tight they can't weasel out of it. He looked around at his brothers. Investigation mode. We're going to war, but we're doing it smart. Wrench grinned. I'll get my camera ready. They had found the pattern. Now they had to expose it. The Phoenix property at 89 Cactus Drive looked perfect. Too perfect. Doc and Tommy Wrench Washington sat on their bikes across the street watching. The house was a small Cape Cod with fresh paint and an American flag hanging by the front door. A banner stretched across the porch. Veterans Hope Initiative. Housing with dignity. Looks like a damn advertisement, Wrench muttered. A young couple was being given a tour by a woman in a blue polo shirt. the same uniform the squatters had worn at Jose House. Through the window, Doc could see them nodding enthusiastically as she gestured around the living room. "They're showing it off," Doc said. "Recruiting more victims or donors?" Wrench pulled out his phone and snapped photos. "Time for the undercover part," Doc nodded. They'd changed into civilian clothes, button-down shirts, khakis, no leather or patches. Wrench had even combed his hair. They looked like any other middle-aged guys, not bikers on a mission. They waited until the couple left, then approached the house. The woman in the blue polo answered the door with a practiced smile. Her name tag read, "Jennifer, Outreach Coordinator. Good afternoon. Are you interested in learning about our veteran housing program?" "Actually, yes," Doc said, turning on the charm. "My uncle served in Vietnam. He's struggling right now, and I heard you folks help veterans keep their homes." Jennifer's smile widened. "We absolutely do! Would you like to come in? This is one of our success stories." Inside, the house was staged like a showroom, furniture arranged perfectly, motivational posters on the walls, pamphlets spread across the coffee table. Everything screamed legitimate non-profit. But Doc's trained eye caught the details. Dust on the mantel, no personal photos, a stack of identical brochures that looked freshly printed. "This home was donated to us by a grateful veteran who wanted to give back," Jennifer explained, launching into what was clearly a rehearsed pitch. "We provide transitional housing for veterans in need. We also help veterans who are struggling with payments by taking over their property management. They get to stay in their homes while we handle the financial burden." "That's generous," Wrench said. "So they just give you their houses. It's a donation program, completely legal. We handle all the paperwork, make it easy for them, and donors receive substantial tax benefits." Jennifer pulled out a folder. "We're actually always looking for more properties. Does your uncle own his home?" Doc's stomach turned. There it was, the hook. They weren't helping veterans. They were hunting for vulnerable targets. "He does?" Doc lied. "Place over in Tucson. He's behind on some bills." Jennifer's eyes lit up. "We can definitely help with that. Let me get you some information." She disappeared into another room. The moment she was gone, Wrench pulled out his phone and started photographing everything. The pamphlets, the staged furniture, a stack of transfer documents sitting on a desk in the corner. Doc grabbed one of the brochures. The notary stamp on the signature page looked identical to the one on Jose's forged papers. Same stamp, same handwriting, same everything. Jennifer returned with a folder full of documents. "Here's our intake form. If you'd like to schedule a consultation with your uncle, we can evaluate his situation and see how we can help him stay in his home." "Stay in his home?" Doc asked. "Or donate it?" Jennifer's smile never wavered. Whatever option works best for his situation. They took the folder, promised to call, and left. Once outside, Wrench let out a long breath. That was creepy as hell. She's like a used car salesman, but for stealing houses. "And she's good at it," Doc said, flipping through the documents. "Look at this. They have forms for everything. Emergency property protection, veteran housing relief, crisis transfer program. It all sounds helpful until you realize it's just different ways to steal someone's home." His phone buzzed. Group text from Carlos and 2 other bikers who'd gone to Mesa. "Mesa house empty. Looks abandoned. Neighbors say veteran who lived here disappeared 3 months ago. Found eviction notice in mailbox." Another text came from a biker named Ray in Sierra Vista. "Found another victim, 78 years old. Paid rent for 14 months before they evicted him anyway. Now living with his daughter." Guy's heart broken. Doc showed the messages to Wrench. "This is systematic. They target vets, steal their homes, stage some properties to look legitimate, evict the others, then use the success stories to lure in more victims." By late afternoon, the biker teams regrouped at a diner outside Tucson. They spread their findings across 2 tables pushed together. Photographs, documents, victim testimonies, addresses. The evidence was overwhelming. Big Mike studied a map where they'd marked every property connected to Veterans Hope Initiative. 12 addresses across 4 counties, 12 stolen homes. Here's the pattern, Mike said, pointing to the map. They hit smaller towns first, places where records aren't digitized, where clerks don't look too closely. They target older veterans, guys living alone, people who won't have family checking on them. Carlos laid out photocopies of the forged documents. Look at the notary stamps. All identical. Same signature. M. Pearson Notary Public. I checked. No notary by that name is registered in Arizona. Completely fabricated. Doc confirmed. Everything about this operation is fake. The nonprofit registration is fake. The notary is fake. The success stories are staged. Jose stared at the evidence, his anger building. How are they getting away with this? Because it looks official, Mike said. County clerks see the stamps and signatures and file the paperwork without verifying. By the time the victims realize what happened, the thieves have legal documents on file. Fighting it requires lawyers and money most vets don't have. Wrench tapped one of the photos. The woman giving us the tour, Jennifer. She mentioned they have an office, Tucson Business Park, Suite 304. That's local. We should check it out, Jose said. Mike shook his head. Not yet. We go in half-cocked. They'll disappear. We need to be smart about this. He pulled out his phone. I know someone who can help. Detective, I served within the Army. He's with the State Police Fraud Division now. Will he take us seriously? Jose asked. Mike smiled grimly. When I show him what we found. Yeah, he will. Around the table, the bikers looked at their evidence. A trail of fraud, forgery, and stolen homes stretching across half the state. What had started as helping one veteran get his house back had uncovered something much bigger. We've got them, Doc said quietly. We've actually got them, Mike nodded. Now we just need to make sure they don't slip away before we can nail them. Jose woke up to his phone exploding with notifications. Hundreds of them. His hands shook as he scrolled through messages, each one worse than the last. You should be ashamed. Attacking a charity that helps veterans. Disgusting. Those bikers are terrorists. He opened his email. The subject line made his blood freeze. You're going to pay for this. Big Mike burst into the room, laptop in hand, his face dark with fury. Have you seen the news? Jose hadn't. Mike turned the laptop around. The headline on Channel 4's website screamed, Disabled veteran and biker gang terrorize non-profit workers. Below it, a video was already at 50,000 views. Jose clicked play and felt his world tilt. The report opened with footage of the bikers surrounding his house. But the angle was wrong, edited to look menacing. 50 men in leather, bikes everywhere, faces hard. The music underneath was ominous. The reporter's voice dripped with concern. A peaceful non-profit organization dedicated to helping homeless veterans found itself under siege yesterday when a local man claiming ownership of a property legally donated to the charity showed up with an intimidating biker gang. Cut to an interview. The slicked hair man from Jose's house, now wearing a suit and an expression of wounded dignity. The Chiron identified him as Michael Stevens, Director, Veterans Hope Initiative. We were terrified, Stevens said, his voice shaking convincingly. These men surrounded our property. We have female staff members who were afraid to leave. This is harassment, pure and simple. We're just trying to help veterans, and we're being threatened for it. The reporter nodded sympathetically. And you have documentation proving the property was legally transferred. Absolutely. Everything was done by the book. This is a registered 501c3 charity. We have donors, board members, oversight. Stevens pulled out papers, different papers than Jose had seen, but they looked official. Mr. Ramirez signed these documents in September. We understand he may be having mental health struggles. Many veterans do, but that doesn't give him the right to send a gang to intimidate our staff. Mental health struggles. Jose's vision went red. The report cut to interviews with concerned citizens, a woman Jose had never seen. I saw those bikers. They look dangerous. That's not how you solve property disputes. A man in a business suit. If this charity is legitimate, and it appears they are, then this is just harassment. Maybe even a hate crime against people doing good work. Then came the kicker. The reporter standing in front of a building speaking directly to camera. Channel 4 has reviewed Veterans Hope Initiative's registration documents with the state. The organization appears to be properly registered and has processed multiple property donations legally. While Mr. Ramirez's supporters claim this is fraud, we found no evidence to support those allegations. What we did find was an intimidating display of force that has left charity workers fearing for their safety. The video ended. Jose stared at the screen, unable to breathe. "They flipped it," he whispered. "They made us the bad guys." Mike was already on his phone, scrolling through comments. They were brutal. "Bikers are always trouble. Lock them up. That poor charity just trying to help people. Veteran or not, this Jose guy sounds unhinged." "They're good," Mike said bitterly. "Really good. Fake registration documents, coached testimony, selective editing." He slammed his laptop shut. And that reporter didn't verify a damn thing, just took their word for it. Jose's phone rang. His neighbor, Lisa, the one who'd supported him yesterday. "Jose, I don't know what to believe anymore," she said, her voice uncertain. "That news report made it look really bad. Are you sure about all this?" They showed official papers. "Lisa, those papers are fake." "But how do you know?" "I mean, 50 bikers, that looked scary, Jose. My kids were asking if we were safe." A pause. "Maybe you should just talk to a lawyer quietly, instead of making this so public." She hung up before he could respond. Over the next 2 hours, it got worse. The story was picked up by other stations, each one adding their own spin. Social media exploded with hot takes. A Twitter thread claiming Jose was a troubled veteran who needs mental help went viral. A Facebook group called Support Veterans Hope Initiative gained 2,000 members in an hour. The bikers who'd stood with Jose started getting harassment. Wrench's motorcycle shop was flooded with 1-star reviews. Owner is part of a gang that terrorizes charities. Carlos got a threatening letter at his home. Doc received calls at the VA clinic where he worked, demanding he be fired. Big Mike took a call from the president of another veterans motorcycle club, one that had sent 5 riders to help yesterday. "Mike, I'm pulling my guys out." The man said, "This is getting too hot. We can't be associated with something that looks like we're attacking a legitimate charity. I'm sorry." Mike hung up and looked at Jose. "We're losing support. People are scared of the optics." Jose sat down heavily. 24 hours ago, they'd had an army. They'd had evidence. They'd been winning. Now they were painted as thugs, conspiracy theorists, and dangerous vigilantes. "This is what they wanted," Jose said quietly. "Make us look crazy. Make people doubt us. Turn public opinion before we can expose them." His phone buzzed again. Another email. This one from the lawyer he'd spoken to yesterday. "Mr. Ramirez, given the recent media coverage, I've decided I cannot represent you in this matter. The optics are too problematic. I'm returning your retainer. Good luck." Doc appeared in the doorway, his face grim. "Detective Mike called your army buddy. He saw the news. He's reconsidering getting involved. Says it doesn't look good for the department to be associated with this." Jose felt everything crumbling. The evidence they'd gathered, the victims they'd found, the pattern they'd exposed. None of it mattered if no one believed them. "They're going to get away with it," he said. "Aren't they?" Big Mike looked at the laptop screen, at the comments calling them thugs and criminals, at the carefully crafted lie that was drowning out the truth. "Not if we can prove they're lying," Mike said. "We just need one crack in their story. One piece of evidence so solid that even the media can't ignore it." "How?" Jose asked. "How do we fight this?" Mike's jaw set with determination. "We find their office. We find their real operation and we document everything." He looked around at the remaining bikers, the ones who hadn't been scared off. "Tomorrow morning we hit that office at Tucson Business Park. We get the evidence we need to blow this wide open, and if we fail," Wrench asked. Mike didn't answer because they all knew if they failed, Jose would lose everything, and a criminal organization would keep stealing from veterans with impunity. They had one shot left. At 6 a.m. on Thursday morning, Detective Sarah Lee sat in an unmarked car outside Tucson Business Park, watching the sunrise paint the sky orange. Beside her, Big Mike nursed his third coffee of the morning. "You sure about this?" Sarah asked. "If I'm wrong, my career is over." "You're not wrong?" Mike said. "Trust me." Sarah Lee had served with Mike in Afghanistan back when she was military police, and he was a sergeant. She'd been the one person who'd returned his call after the media disaster, not because she believed him immediately, but because she knew Mike didn't lie. What convinced her was the overnight breakthrough. Doc had gotten creative. Using the brochures they'd collected from the staged house in Phoenix, he'd traced the printer marks, a forensic technique he'd learned documenting evidence in field hospitals. The documents had been printed at a FedEx office in Tucson 3 days ago. The order was paid for with a credit card belonging to Michael Stevens, the same Michael Stevens who'd claimed on TV that the documents were processed months ago through official channels. Sarah had run Stevens' name through the system. No criminal record, but plenty of red flags. 3 LLCs registered under his name, all dissolved. A pattern of lawsuits and sudden relocations, and most damning, a previous arrest for real estate fraud in Nevada. Charges dropped on a technicality. He's done this before. Sarah had told Mike at 2 a.m. Different state, different scam, same pattern. Now, as the sun rose, Sarah's phone buzzed from her lieutenant. "You have the green light. Don't make me regret this." "We're on," Sarah said. Mike sent out the message to the bikers positioned at 4 different locations across the county. At each stolen property, riders were stationed out of sight, cameras ready, blocking the back exits where scammers might try to run. At 7:15 a.m., the office door at Suite 304 opened. Jennifer, the outreach coordinator from Phoenix, arrived first, carrying a box of donuts and humming to herself. She unlocked the door and disappeared inside. Stevens arrived 10 minutes later in a BMW. The woman from Jose's house, who'd claimed to be a non-profit director, pulled up in a Mercedes. "Not bad for charity workers," Sarah muttered. By 7:45 a.m., 5 people were inside the office. Through the window they could see filing cabinets, computers, and walls covered with maps marked with addresses, targets. Sarah's backup arrived 4 patrol units. Silent, no lights. They parked in formation, blocking every exit from the business park. "All teams ready," Sarah said into her radio for confirmations came back. Officers positioned at Phoenix Mesa and 2 properties in Tucson, including Jose's house. "Execute in 3, 2, 1 in." Sarah and 6 officers hit the door of Suite 304 with a battering ram. State police search warrant. Nobody moved. The scene inside was chaos. Stevens jumped up from a desk covered with forged documents. Jennifer dropped her coffee. The others froze, hands half raised, faces showing pure panic on the ground. "Now," officers shouted. Sarah went straight for the computers. On the screen in front of Stevens was an open spreadsheet titled Active Targets with 23 addresses listed, including Jose's columns marked veteran name, equity value, contact status, document stage. "Got it," Sarah called out. "All the evidence we need." An officer pulled open a filing cabinet. Inside were stacks of blank deed transfer forms, forged notary stamps, fake non-profit certificates, and jackpot, envelopes stuffed with cash and checks made out to Stevens personally. Outside, Big Mike had his phone out live streaming the whole thing. The footage showed police leading Stevens out in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled, his face no longer confident but terrified. "This is Michael Stevens," Mike narrated for the camera. "The man who went on TV claiming to be a legitimate charity director. The man who's been stealing homes from disabled veterans. Watch him take his perp walk." The live stream viewer count climbed 500, 1,000, 5,000. At Jose's house, the raid was even more dramatic. 2 squad cars pulled up simultaneously with a forced entry. The squatters inside, caught completely off guard, tried to run out the back door, only to find bikers with cameras blocking their escape. "Smile for the internet," Wrench said, filming as police grabbed them. Inside Jose's house, officers found more forged documents, fake identification cards, and a laptop with templates for creating fraudulent deed transfers. On the kitchen table, Jose's kitchen table, was a list of 15 more veterans they were planning to target. Jose stood on his lawn, watching police clear out his house, and felt tears he didn't know he'd been holding back finally break free. At the Phoenix property, police arrested Jennifer and seized the entire showroom, evidence that the staged houses were part of the con. At Mesa, they found the real estate agent who'd been helping Stevens flip the stolen properties for profit. By 9 a.m., 11 people were in custody. By 10 a.m., the live stream had 50,000 viewers and climbing. By noon, the same reporters who'd called Jose a vigilante were scrambling to cover the real story. Channel 4's morning anchor, looking humbled, reported, "Breaking news. A massive fraud operation targeting veterans has been busted by state police. The organization we featured earlier this week, Veterans Hope Initiative, was actually a sophisticated criminal enterprise. We apologize for our earlier reporting." Sarah stood in the Suite 304 office, surrounded by evidence, and called Mike outside. "We found records for 38 properties, 38 stolen homes across 5 counties. This is the biggest veteran-targeted fraud case Arizona has seen in a decade." Mike looked at Jose, who'd driven over the moment he heard about the raid. "You did this. You didn't give up." Jose shook his head. "We did this. All of us." Around them, bikers were filming, documenting, making sure every piece of evidence was recorded and shared. The truth was finally coming out. Not because of the media, not because of the system, but because veterans refused to abandon one of their own. Stevens was being loaded into a police car when he spotted Jose. For a moment, their eyes met. Stevens looked away first. "How long will he go away for?" Jose asked Sarah. "With everything we found, 20 years minimum, maybe more." She smiled. "You're getting your house back, Jose. Today, right now, it's yours again." Jose looked at his house, his home. As police removed the last of the fake paperwork and evidence bags, after 4 days of hell, it was finally over. The nightmare had ended. Justice had won. By 3 p.m., Jose Ramirez stood in his living room for the first time in 4 days, and it felt like coming home from war all over again. The police had cleared out everything, the squatters' belongings, the forged documents, the staged furniture they'd brought in. What remained was his house, exactly as he'd left it. His grandfather's silver star still sat in its shadow box above the fireplace. His coffee mug, the one with the Army Rangers logo, was still in the sink where he'd left it Tuesday morning. For days, it had only been 4 days, but it felt like a lifetime. "They're all over the news," Doc said, walking in with his phone. "Every channel massive fraud ring exposed. Veterans unite to stop home theft scam. Bikers help bust criminal organization." Jose took the phone and scrolled through the headlines. Channel 4, the same station that had called him unhinged, was now running a special report. We got it wrong. How media failed a veteran hero. The reporter who'd interviewed Stevens was on administrative leave. 38 homes, Jose said quietly. 38 veterans they stole from. 37 are getting their homes back, Big Mike said, coming in through the front door with Wrench and Carlos. Robert Yates called me crying, said he's stopping rent payments tomorrow, going back to being a homeowner instead of a tenant in his own house. Jose felt something tight in his chest release. It hadn't just been about him. It had never been just about him. Stevens' lawyer is already trying to cut a deal, Detective Sarah Lee said, arriving with official paperwork. But the DA's not interested. With all the evidence we seized, plus testimony from 38 victims, he's done. They all are. She handed Jose a document. Official restoration of property ownership. 512. Saguaro Lane is legally yours again, as if it never left. The fraudulent transfer has been voided. Jose stared at the paper, his vision blurring. Thank you, he managed, for believing us. Thank Mike, Sarah said. He didn't let me ignore it. She looked around at the bikers filling his living room. You all did something remarkable. You could have let the system handle it, and we both know how that would have gone. Instead, you fought the right way. After she left, the bikers got to work. Mike had organized everything. While Jose had been at the police station giving his statement, a crew had shown up with cleaning supplies, tools, and determination. Wrench installed new deadbolts on all the doors, high security. Nobody's getting in here without you knowing. Carlos set up a ring camera system. Motion sensors, night vision, connects to your phone. You'll see anyone who comes near this place. Doc and 3 others scrubbed every surface the squatters had touched. Fresh start, Doc said like they were never here. Neighbors started showing up around 5 p.m. Mrs. Lee brought a casserole. The Patels brought tamales. Lisa from the corner house arrived with flowers and an apology. I'm sorry I doubted you, she said, tears in her eyes. When I saw the news this morning, saw them arresting those people. Jose, I'm so sorry. You were scared. Jose said they were good liars. That's why it worked. By 6 p.m., his house was cleaner than it had been in years, more secure than Fort Knox, and filled with the smell of home-cooked food from a dozen different families. Big Mike pulled Jose aside. One more thing, he said with a mysterious smile. At 7 p.m., as the sun began to set, Jose heard it, that familiar rumble growing louder. He walked to his front porch and stopped. Motorcycles were coming from every direction, not just the 50 that had surrounded his house before. This was 100, maybe more. They filled Saguaro Lane, spilled into side streets, formed a river of chrome and leather and American flags. The entire neighborhood had come outside. Kids sat on parents' shoulders. People held up phones filming, and at the front of the procession, Big Mike led the way, an enormous banner stretched between 2 bikes. Welcome home, Jose. The engines roared in perfect harmony, a thunder that shook windows and rattled in Jose's chest. They rode past slowly, deliberately, each biker saluting as they passed. Vietnam vets with gray beards, Gulf War vets with faded patches, Afghanistan and Iraq vets, young faces with old eyes, men and women who'd served, who understood what it meant to fight for something that mattered. Jose stood on his porch, his cane forgotten, his hand over his heart, tears streaming down his face. This wasn't just about getting his house back. This was about being seen, being valued, being reminded that he wasn't alone, that he'd never been alone, that the brotherhood forged in service extended beyond battlefields and into living rooms and courtrooms and neighborhood streets. The parade lasted 20 minutes. When the last bike passed and the engines finally quieted, the neighborhood erupted in applause. Jose looked around at the faces, his neighbors, his brothers, his community, and felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. He felt home. Big Mike dismounted and walked up the porch steps. He didn't say anything, just pulled Jose into a hug that said everything words couldn't. "Thank you," Jose whispered, "for not leaving me behind." "Never," Mike said. "That's not what brothers do." That night, Jose slept in his own bed, in his own house, surrounded by people who had fought for him when he couldn't fight alone. And for the first time in 4 days, he slept peacefully. The house was his again. The thieves were in jail. Justice had been served. But more than that, he'd been reminded of something war had taught him, and civilian life had made him forget. Nobody fights alone. Not if they have brothers who refuse to let them. Welcome home, indeed.